she yelled. "You'll never find someone like me." I calmly said, "That's the point." Now she's stalking my new girlfriend's page daily and losing sleep. What started as a simple conversation about our upcoming 3-year anniversary turned into the most calculated betrayal I've ever experienced. I'm Tyler, a 29-year-old landscape architect who specializes in sustainable garden design, and I thought I knew the woman I'd been building a life with for 3 years. I was sketching plans for a rooftop garden project when Jenna walked into my home office 3 weeks before our anniversary dinner, her expression unusually serious. "Tyler, we need to talk about our relationship," she said, settling into the chair across from my drafting table. "I've been thinking about us, about where we're going, and I need to explore my authentic self." The phrase felt rehearsed, like she'd practiced it in the mirror. "I think we should try an open relationship. Just temporarily, so I can grow as a person." I set down my pencil and studied her face. In 3 years together, she'd never mentioned feeling restricted or needing space to explore anything. "What brought this on?" I asked. "Cameron's been helping me see things differently," she said, mentioning her rock climbing instructor from the local adventure center for the first time in weeks. "He thinks I've been limiting myself, playing it safe in our relationship instead of experiencing real adventure." The way she said his name, with this soft reverence, made something cold settle in my stomach. I'd noticed changes over the past month. Late-night phone calls she'd take in the other room. New hiking gear appearing in her closet despite never expressing interest in outdoor adventures before. The subtle shift from we to I in her conversations about future plans. "So you want to date other people?" I said, keeping my voice level. "I want to explore what else is out there," she corrected, as if semantics made the betrayal less obvious. "Cameron's teaching me about living authentically, about not settling for comfortable when you could have extraordinary." I realized then that this wasn't a spontaneous decision or some quarter-life crisis. This was a calculated exit strategy, and Cameron wasn't just her climbing instructor anymore. That evening, while Jenna showered, I did something I'd never done before. I checked her phone. The message history with Cameron told the complete story I'd been too trusting to see. Weeks of planning hiking trail adventures, sharing intimate Spotify playlists, discussing their connection in terms that made my stomach turn. "Can't wait for our weekend escape," read one message dated 2 weeks ago. "Tyler has no idea what real adventure looks like," read another. The most damning was from 3 days prior. "Already found the perfect mountain cabin for next weekend. This is going to change everything." I scrolled through dozens of messages revealing a fully developed emotional and physical affair disguised as outdoor adventure planning. When Jenna emerged from the bathroom, I was sitting on our bed with her phone in my hand. "Find anything interesting in your adventure planning?" I asked, watching her face cycle through surprise, panic, then defiance. "You went through my phone," she said, grabbing it from me. "That's a violation of trust." The audacity was breathtaking. "Trust," I repeated. "Like planning a romantic getaway with your climbing instructor while telling me you need space to explore?" Her expression shifted from caught to aggressive. "This is exactly why I need to explore other options. You're emotionally suffocating, Tyler. You're afraid of growth, of change, of anything that challenges your safe little bubble." She gestured around our apartment, at the botanical sketches on the walls, the thriving indoor garden I'd cultivated. "Cameron understands adventure. He doesn't spend his weekends obsessing over plants and soil composition." The next morning, I found printed reservation confirmations hidden in her car's glove compartment while returning her yoga mat. "Mountain cabin retreat, premium package, 2 occupants." The same weekend she told me she needed space to think about us. I photographed the confirmations and left them on her pillow with a simple note: "Enjoy your authentic adventure. Don't come back." When she called that afternoon, crying and claiming the reservations were just to have options and didn't mean anything serious, I'd already changed our shared streaming passwords and started researching one-bedroom apartments. "Tyler, please, we can work through this," she sobbed over the phone. "Cameron's just a friend. The cabin was just in case I needed space to think." I listened to her scramble for explanations, each one more desperate than the last. "You've had space to think," I said finally. You thought your way right into someone else's bed. Consider this your permanent space. Within 72 hours of our breakup, Jenna's Instagram transformed into a carefully curated adventure documentary. Professional quality photos of her scaling rock faces in expensive gear, sunset camping shots with shadowy male figures, and inspirational captions about finally living authentically with someone who understands real adventure. I watched this performance with detached fascination, recognizing the woman who used to complain about getting dirt under her fingernails during my garden projects. Finally found someone who pushes me to be extraordinary instead of settling for ordinary, read one caption over a photo of her wearing what looked like a $400 climbing harness. Another showed her preparing gourmet camping meals with the text, "When your partner actually knows how to live life instead of just existing in a safe bubble." The mutual friends started reaching out within a week, sharing increasingly uncomfortable details about Jenna's public relations campaign against our relationship. "She's been telling everyone you were emotionally controlling," my friend Marcus told me over coffee. "Says you were obsessed with plants instead of real experiences and tried to keep her from growing as a person." The revisionist history was impressive in its thoroughness. According to the narrative she was spreading at parties and social gatherings, I'd been a suffocating partner who feared adventure and tried to trap her in domestic mediocrity while Cameron represented freedom and authentic living. The most detailed intel came from Aria, Jenna's ex-coworker from the marketing firm where they'd both worked 2 years ago. Aria had always been friendly when we'd run into each other at coffee shops, but we'd never been close. She reached out through Instagram with genuine concern after witnessing what she called Jenna's trash-talking sessions at their shared yoga studio. "Tyler, I need you to know what she's been saying about you," Aria wrote in her message. "She's been showing off all this expensive camping equipment, saying Cameron recommended it but she had to buy it all herself. She keeps bragging about how he's everything you could never be in terms of spontaneity and masculine energy." Aria included screenshots of Jenna's Venmo payments for climbing gear, camping equipment, and outdoor photography sessions, all funded by herself while she publicly credited Cameron's expertise. "She told our entire yoga class that you spent 3 years trying to turn her into a houseplant," Aria continued in our conversation. "Said you were threatened by her adventurous spirit and tried to keep her trapped in your botanical bubble because you were too insecure to handle a woman with real ambitions." The most insulting part was how Jenna positioned Cameron as some kind of outdoor business entrepreneur and extreme sports expert, conveniently leaving out that he was a part-time climbing instructor who still lived with his parents and drove a 2003 Honda Civic with a missing bumper. She keeps posting about his supposed outdoor photography business and adventure tourism expertise, Aria told me during our phone call. But I looked him up, and his Instagram has maybe 50 followers and no evidence of any actual business ventures. The guy posts selfies at the local climbing gym and shares motivational quotes about living authentically. What struck me most was how completely Jenna had rewritten our relationship history to justify her betrayal. The woman who used to mock my dirt therapy sessions and complained about the smell of compost was now presenting herself as someone whose wild spirit had been systematically crushed by a controlling partner obsessed with boring domestic projects. "She actually said you were intimidated by her desire for real adventure," Aria reported. "Told everyone that Cameron makes her feel alive in ways you never could because he's not afraid of taking risks and living spontaneously." I realized then that this wasn't just about moving on with someone new. This was about completely rebranding herself as an adventurous outdoor goddess while positioning me as the boring obstacle she'd heroically overcome to find her authentic self. Aria's concern for how I was handling the situation surprised me. "Look, I know this is probably the last thing you want to think about right now," she said during our second phone conversation, "but that anniversary weekend you had planned is coming up, and I hate the thought of you moping around while she parades her supposed upgrade all over social media." She had a point. I'd been dreading that weekend, knowing Jenna would be documenting her mountain cabin adventure with Cameron while I sat alone in my apartment analyzing soil samples. "What did you have in mind originally?" Ari asked. I told her about the community garden installation I'd been designing for the Riverside Park, how I'd planned to show Jenna the preliminary sketches over our anniversary dinner. "That sounds amazing," Arya said with genuine enthusiasm. I'd love to see those designs. I work as a botanical illustrator, and community gardens are exactly the kind of project that gets me excited about sustainable living. Our first meeting was supposed to be just coffee and a quick look at my sketches, but it turned into 3 hours of animated discussion about permaculture design, native plant species, and the intersection of art and environmental consciousness. Arya studied my drawings with an intensity one hadn't seen from anyone in years, asking detailed questions about water management systems and soil composition that revealed actual understanding of sustainable architecture. This section here, with the raised beds arranged in spirals, she said, tracing the lines with her finger, that's brilliant for maximizing growing space while creating natural windbreaks. I felt something I hadn't experienced with Jenna in our entire relationship. Intellectual connection with someone who appreciated the thoughtful complexity behind my work. I have an idea, Arya said, pulling out her own sketchbook. What if we collaborated on this? I could create botanical illustrations to accompany your installation, maybe design informational panels that show the seasonal cycles of your plant selections. Her drawings were extraordinary, detailed scientific illustrations that captured both the technical accuracy and natural beauty of native flora. The city's Environmental Arts Committee is always looking for projects that combine education with practical sustainability, she continued. This could be something really meaningful, not just for that weekend, but as an actual contribution to the community. Working with Arya felt like rediscovering a part of myself that Jenna had slowly convinced me was boring and irrelevant. Over the next 2 weeks, our collaboration evolved beyond the community garden project. Arya remembered every detail I shared about my sustainable architecture goals, asked follow-up questions about my permaculture certification studies, and brought research articles about innovative garden design techniques to our planning sessions. I've been following your work online, she admitted one afternoon while we reviewed plant selection options. I saw that rooftop garden you designed for the downtown library, and I've been admiring your approach to creating beautiful, functional spaces that actually serve communities instead of just individual ego. The contrast with Jenna was stark. Where Jenna had seen my passion for sustainable design as evidence of limited ambition, Arya recognized it as expertise worth developing and celebrating. Can I tell you something? Arya said during one of our late-night planning sessions at my apartment, surrounded by sketches and plant identification guides. I've watched Jenna's social media transformation, and it's honestly disturbing how completely she's rewritten your relationship. The Tyler she's describing, this supposedly controlling, unambitious guy obsessed with boring domestic projects, that's not the person I'm getting to know. You're passionate about creating lasting, meaningful change through environmental design. That's not limiting yourself, that's focusing your talents on something that actually matters. For the first time since the breakup, I felt seen and valued for exactly who I was, not despite it. Cameron's disappearance from Jenna's social media happened overnight, leaving a trail of deleted photos and edited captions that suddenly made no sense. The confident outdoor goddess posts abruptly shifted to cryptic messages about learning hard lessons about trust and people who use others for financial gain. I wouldn't have paid much attention if Arya hadn't called me with news from their shared yoga instructor. Something's happened with Jenna and her adventure boyfriend, Arya told me, barely containing her excitement. Melissa said Jenna showed up to class yesterday crying, asking if anyone knew how to contact Cameron because he'd blocked her on everything and disappeared. The full story emerged over the next few days through the local outdoor recreation community's surprisingly efficient gossip network. Cameron hadn't just been dating Jenna while running his supposed outdoor tourism business. He'd been simultaneously romance scamming 3 other women from different climbing gyms across the city, each believing they were his exclusive business partner and romantic interest. He convinced all of them to invest in his adventure tourism startup, Arya explained after talking to someone who knew one of the other victims. Professional photography equipment, premium camping gear, website development, marketing materials. Jenna apparently put in the most money because she was trying to prove she was serious about the outdoor lifestyle. I felt a mixture of vindication and genuine sympathy when I learned the extent of Cameron's scam. He'd never owned an outdoor photography business or had any legitimate adventure tourism expertise. The guy lived in his parents' basement and worked part-time at 3 different climbing gyms, collecting contact information from women who seemed financially stable and romantically available. Each woman thought she was special, that he was sharing his entrepreneurial dreams only with her, Arya told me. He had them buying expensive equipment for their shared adventures while he photographed them for his supposed business portfolio. The equipment conveniently went missing after each photo shoot. Jenna had invested over $4,000 in Cameron's fake venture, including the professional camping gear she'd been showing off on Instagram, camera equipment for their supposed adventure documentation business, and deposits for the outdoor workshops they were supposedly going to offer together. When one of the other victims discovered Cameron's multiple relationships and confronted him publicly at a climbing gym, he'd immediately disappeared from all social media platforms and stopped showing up at his various part-time jobs. The other women are trying to organize some kind of group to get their money back, Arya reported, but Cameron's completely vanished. Even his co-workers don't know where he went. The psychological manipulation was almost impressive in its calculated cruelty. Cameron had specifically targeted women who felt insecure about their adventurous credentials, convincing them that investing in his business ventures would prove their commitment to authentic outdoor living. He'd used their financial contributions to fund his actual lifestyle while making them feel like partners in building something meaningful together. Jenna's Instagram went from confident adventure goddess to victim of financial manipulation in about 48 hours, Arya observed. She deleted all the posts about their business partnership and replaced them with vague quotes about resilience and learning to trust again. The irony wasn't lost on me that Jenna had left our stable, honest relationship for a complete fabrication based on lies and financial exploitation. The doorbell rang at 12:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, jarring me awake from where I'd fallen asleep reviewing permits for our community garden project. I found Jenna on my doorstep, mascara streaked down her cheeks, wearing an oversized hoodie I recognized from our relationship. "Tyler, thank God you answered," she sobbed, pushing past me into the apartment. "I need to talk to you. Everything's fallen apart and I realize now that you were the only real thing I ever had." I stood in my doorway, processing the surreal scene of my ex-girlfriend having a breakdown in my living room while Arya sat at my kitchen table, botanical illustration sketches spread around her laptop, looking up from her work with obvious confusion. "Who's this?" Jenna demanded, her tears immediately replaced by accusatory anger as she noticed Arya's presence. "This is Arya," I said calmly. "She's helping me design the community garden installation." Jenna's eyes darted between Arya's detailed plant illustrations and the project plans covering my kitchen table, taking in the obvious evidence of creative collaboration. "You're working together at midnight?" she asked, her voice rising with suspicion. "We're trying to meet the city's deadline for the Environmental Arts Committee proposal," Arya replied with professional courtesy, gathering her sketches protectively. "Tyler's created something really beautiful here." Jenna's breakdown escalated as she absorbed the scope of what Arya and I were building together. The detailed drawings of native plant installations, the sustainable water feature designs, the educational components that combined both our expertise into something neither of us could have created alone. "You moved on that fast?" she accused, pointing at our collaborative workspace. "You couldn't wait 2 months to start playing house with someone new?" The accusation was so backwards it was almost funny. "We're working on a professional project," I said. "Something the city commissioned for community environmental education." But Jenna was beyond rational conversation, spiraling into the kind of dramatic meltdown I'd witnessed whenever her manipulations failed to produce the desired results. "This is exactly what I was talking about," she said, her voice becoming shrill. "You planned this whole thing while I was trying to grow as a person. You probably had her waiting in the wings the entire time we were together." Arya stood up slowly, her expression shifting from confused to disgusted as she recognized the manipulation tactics. "Actually, Jenna, I have screenshots of all your posts about how Tyler was too boring and unambitious for your adventurous spirit," she said with quiet authority. "Messages you sent to mutual friends about how Cameron was everything Tyler could never be. Direct quotes about Tyler being emotionally suffocating and obsessed with plants instead of real experiences." The color drained from Jenna's face as Arya pulled out her phone and began reading direct quotes from the trash-talking campaign. Tyler's too domesticated for someone with my wild spirit. Cameron actually understands adventure and masculine energy. Tyler spends his weekends obsessing over soil composition instead of living life. Arya looked up from her phone with devastating calm. These are your words from the yoga studio, from party conversations, from social media posts you've since deleted. You spent months telling everyone who would listen that Tyler was beneath you and Cameron was your upgrade to authentic living. Those were private conversations, Jenna protested weakly. I was confused and hurting and trying to figure out what I wanted. Arya's expression remained coldly factual. You also publicly posted about finally finding someone who knows what real adventure looks like, about being with a real man who isn't afraid of spontaneity, about how some people settle for ordinary while you chose extraordinary. None of that sounds like confusion. It sounds like calculated cruelty designed to justify abandoning someone who actually cared about you. The confrontation continued for another hour, with Jenna cycling through every manipulation tactic in her arsenal. Tears about how Cameron had used her, anger about how we'd supposedly betrayed her trust, guilt trips about our 3-year relationship meaning nothing to me, and finally desperate promises to change completely if I'd just give her another chance. I realize now that what we had was special, she pleaded. Cameron was a mistake. You're the stable, reliable man I should have appreciated. I was stupid and immature, but I've learned my lesson about chasing excitement over substance. But the most revealing moment came when she tried to position herself as the victim of our supposed affair. You're both horrible people, she declared with renewed indignation. Planning your relationship while I was going through the worst experience of my life. Taking advantage of my vulnerability to start something behind my back. The complete rewriting of timeline and responsibility was breathtaking. Jenna, I said finally, you left me for Cameron 3 months ago. You told our mutual friends I was too boring for your adventurous spirit. You posted constantly about finally finding real love with someone who understood authentic living. Arya and I started working together on this project 2 weeks ago, professionally, because we both care about environmental sustainability. Your relationship with Cameron ended because he was scamming you, not because we did anything wrong. Jenna's revenge campaign began within 48 hours of her failed reconciliation attempt, starting with what she probably thought was strategic warfare against my professional reputation. I discovered the first attack when my business partner called me about fake negative reviews appearing on our landscape design company's Google page. Tyler destroys natural habitats with his so-called sustainable gardens. Read one review from a newly created account. Overcharges clients for basic gardening while pretending to be an environmental expert. His designs actually harm local ecosystems. 3 more fake reviews appeared that day, each more elaborate in their accusations of environmental damage and professional incompetence. The attacks escalated to official complaints filed with the city's environmental department, claiming our community garden project violated regulations for disturbing protected wetland areas. I spent 2 days in bureaucratic hell, providing documentation to prove our site was nowhere near protected wetlands and had already been approved by 3 different city departments. Someone clearly knows enough about environmental terminology to make the complaints sound credible, the city inspector told me after reviewing our permits. But they're completely fabricated accusations designed to create administrative delays. The timing was obviously intended to sabotage our project deadline for the Environmental Arts Committee. While I dealt with the professional sabotage, Arya faced her own targeted harassment campaign. Multiple fake accounts have been contacting my illustration clients, she told me, showing me screenshots of messages claiming she was unprofessional and steals other artists' work. The messages included just enough personal details to seem credible, referencing specific projects and client names that could only have come from someone who'd been monitoring her social media presence obsessively. One potential client actually canceled a commission because they received an anonymous tip that I have a history of plagiarism, Arya said with obvious frustration. It's affecting my actual livelihood now. Jenna's social media presence during this period was a masterclass in manipulative storytelling. She posted lengthy Instagram stories about betrayal and fake friends, accompanied by crying selfies and vague threats wrapped in inspirational language. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who will destroy your happiness for their own gain, read one post over a photo of her looking devastated. Trust your instincts when someone shows you their true colors. Revenge is best served by living your authentic truth. The comments from her followers were exactly what she'd hoped for, offering support for her obvious victimhood and outrage at the unnamed betrayers who'd clearly wronged her. The harassment reached peak absurdity when Jenna showed up at the yoga studio to confront Arya publicly during a crowded evening class. "I need everyone to know what kind of person you really are," she announced, interrupting the meditation session. "You seduced my boyfriend while I was going through the worst period of my life. You destroyed a 3-year relationship because you were jealous of what Tyler and I had together." The yoga instructor, who had witnessed months of Jenna's relationship complaints during previous classes, asked her to leave immediately. "Jenna, you spent the last 3 months of your relationship telling everyone here that Tyler was too boring and domesticated for your adventurous spirit," the instructor said firmly. "You bragged about upgrading to someone who actually understood authentic living. You can't rewrite history just because your new relationship didn't work out." But Jenna's campaign backfired spectacularly when our mutual friends started sharing receipts of her previous posts and comments. Screenshots of her bragging about Cameron, photos she'd posted about finally finding real adventure, and direct quotes about how Tyler was too limited for someone with her wild spirit began circulating through our social circle. She literally posted, "Finally found someone who knows what real passion looks like," with a photo of her and Cameron, our friend Marcus shared in the group chat. Now she's claiming Tyler was the love of her life and we ruined everything? The gaslighting is insane. The most damaging evidence came from her own deleted social media posts, which several people had screenshotted during her adventure goddess phase. "Tyler's too comfortable with ordinary. Cameron pushes me to be extraordinary," read one caption. "Some people settle for safe. I chose authentic living with someone who actually understands adventure," read another. "Finally free from domestic mediocrity to explore real passion with a man who isn't afraid of taking risks," declared a third. When these screenshots started circulating alongside her current victim narrative, even her most sympathetic friends began questioning her version of events. "The cognitive dissonance is incredible," Arya observed as we reviewed the evidence people were sharing. 3 months ago, she was publicly celebrating her escape from your boring, controlling relationship. Now she's claiming you were her soulmate and I'm the home-wrecking villain who destroyed true love. She actually expects people to believe both versions simultaneously. The harassment campaign had exposed Jenna's manipulative patterns to everyone in our social circle, making her current victim narrative impossible to maintain against the documented evidence of her previous celebration of leaving me for someone supposedly superior. The opening ceremony for our community garden installation was scheduled for a beautiful Saturday morning in late spring, with representatives from the city's environmental committee, local environmental groups, and families from the surrounding neighborhood. Arya and I had spent weeks perfecting the combination of sustainable design and educational art installation, creating something that genuinely served the community while showcasing both our professional expertise. I was setting up the informational displays when I spotted Jenna approaching with 2 friends flanking her like backup dancers, clearly preparing for some kind of dramatic confrontation. "There he is," Jenna announced loudly enough for the gathering crowd to hear. "The man who destroyed a 3-year relationship to play environmental hero with his new girlfriend." Her friends nodded supportively, obviously briefed on their roles as witnesses to whatever scene she'd planned. "Tyler, I brought Sarah and Michelle here to see what kind of person you really are. How you abandoned someone who loved you to start an affair with that woman." She pointed dramatically at Arya, who was calmly explaining our water management system to a group of interested residents. The mayor, who had personally supported our project from the initial proposal phase and knew Arya's work from previous city beautification initiatives, noticed the disruption immediately. "Excuse me," she said, approaching Jenna with professional authority. "This is a public environmental ceremony celebrating sustainable community development. If you're here to cause a disturbance, I'll need to ask security to escort you from the premises." Jenna's confident expression faltered as she realized the mayor wasn't just some random official, but someone who clearly knew and respected our work. "This man is a cheater and a liar," Jenna insisted, her voice becoming more shrill as she lost control of her narrative. "He started an affair while I was going through trauma from my previous relationship. They planned this whole project as a cover for their secret romance." The mayor's expression shifted to barely concealed irritation. "Ma'am, I've been following this project for months. Tyler and Aria submitted their collaborative proposal through proper city channels, with full documentation of their professional credentials and environmental expertise. Their personal lives are none of the city's business, but their contribution to our community sustainability goals is exceptional." Someone in the crowd was recording the confrontation on their phone, capturing Jenna's increasingly unhinged accusations against the backdrop of our beautiful, functional garden installation. "She seduced my boyfriend with her plant drawings," Jenna declared, gesturing wildly at Aria's detailed botanical illustrations that lined the educational displays. "They used environmental activism as an excuse to destroy my relationship." The absurdity of her claims, delivered in front of families enjoying our interactive learning stations about native plant species, made her look completely disconnected from reality. The final humiliation came when security did escort her from the premises, but not before her meltdown had been documented and shared across local Facebook community groups as an example of unhinged ex-girlfriend behavior disrupting public environmental education. The video went viral within hours, with comments mocking her desperate attempts to frame environmental activism as some kind of romantic conspiracy. "Imagine being so bitter about your ex moving on that you crash a community garden opening to accuse him of seducing someone with plant knowledge," read one typical comment. Within 2 weeks, Jenna's social media presence completely disappeared. Her Instagram account was deactivated, her Facebook profile went private, and mutual friends reported she'd been fired from her marketing position at a firm that specialized in lifestyle brand development. Apparently, her employers had seen the viral video and decided her public meltdown didn't align with their company's professional image. "She moved across the country to live with relatives," Marcus told me a month later. "Completely started over somewhere fresh where nobody knows about the Cameron situation or the garden ceremony disaster." Meanwhile, Aria and I's relationship flourished as we continued collaborating on environmental art installations throughout the city. Our partnership had evolved naturally from professional respect to genuine romantic connection, built on shared values and mutual appreciation for each other's expertise. 6 months after the garden opening, we were planning a sustainable living workshop series and discussing moving in together to a house with space for both a design studio and botanical illustration workspace. "You know what's funny?" Aria said one evening as we reviewed proposals for our next city project. "Jenna was right about one thing. You did find someone who appreciates your passion for environmental design. She just couldn't imagine that someone might value substance over surface-level adventure performance." I realized then that losing Jenna had been the best thing that could have happened, clearing the way for a partnership with someone who actually deserved the care and commitment I had to offer.